Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, my name is Neel and I currently work as a consultant at Bain & Company, and then you'll meet Rohit pretty soon. He actually just started his internship with Bain pretty recently. The reason that Rohit and I made this channel is because we came from a non-target school when trying to go through the big three consulting process, the big three being McKinsey, Bain, and BCG. And it was pretty tough for us because there weren't many resources that we could easily go to and figure out everything that we needed. We had to kind of piece by piece find all of the things that we needed to know in order to be able to do the process, luckily, successfully. So that's why we've created this channel. Today's video, I think, will be pretty special. We'll be casing each other. I think we haven't decided yet, either Rohit will case me or I'll case him, but I think this will be really valuable for y'all to see how people who have made it through the process successfully case. Keep in mind though, we haven't cased, I think in my situation, I haven't cased maybe like 2 years, and then Rohit maybe hasn't cased within the last like 6 months. So we might be a little rusty, but that's okay. And I think that there are 3 things I want y'all to keep in mind to make this video as useful for y'all as possible. The first one, of course, is just realizing we're not going to be perfect at casing and we're not perfect at providing feedback. I think a reason to keep that in mind is because there might be some things that you do your own way or some pieces of feedback you've heard from someone else that is in conflict with what we say. I think that's totally fine. And that's really where it takes your problem solving skills to be able to figure out, all right, what is more genuine to me? What do I think is best in different situations? And then be able to just adapt that to your style. The second thing is, as either I'm casing Rohit or he cases me, or in future casing videos when people are casing each other, I would recommend that you almost act as if the interviewer is casing you and you pause the video along with how the case is progressing so that you could take a stab at creating an answer, a framework, doing the math or whatever, and then be able to compare it actively to the person who's actually being cased in the video. That way you can see how you did it, you can have an additional rep, and then you can see the difference between how you did it and the person did it, so that hopefully you can learn from that without actually having to have another person case you. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention before we dive into the actual case is that right now we're filming this video June 17th, and there's just a couple months before when a lot of y'all I know will be applying for these internships or full-time positions in the next 2 or 3 months. So we would love if y'all could provide us comments down below where you tell us what aspects of the case interview you want us to really focus on and deep dive, and then also any other burning questions that you think would be really useful for y'all as you're approaching your applications, the internships, and all of that. I think that's enough talking for me. Let's go on to the case. All right, I guess we decided Rohit's gonna case me. So keep in mind, I haven't cased, I think, in 3 years. The last time I cased was maybe like October of like 2017, and it's June 2020 right now. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, I get to have the fun casing him. So let's get into it if you're ready.
Sure, yeah, I'm
Okay,
good.
cool. Your friend has approached you with a business idea and he wants your advice. He wants to open a DVD rental service in New York City, specifically Manhattan. DVDs would be delivered to customers through delivery people on bicycles. What would you tell your friend?
Cool, that's an interesting idea. I'm guessing this is probably before the time of Netflix and Corona. Like, we should assume that coronavirus isn't happening, that Netflix and like mass live streaming services haven't, maybe like the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Should we assume that?
Yeah, that's a fair assumption.
Okay, good, because otherwise I would tell him not to do it, because that wouldn't work. But yeah, assuming all of those things, that's good to know. And so, I guess just to clarify, if I've heard the details correctly. Friends approached me. He wants to start a DVD rental service where people would, on bike, deliver DVDs to people within Manhattan.
Correct.
Right. And so, I mean, if I had to guess, I would assume my friend is doing this maybe because he thinks this is an idea that would become profitable pretty soon. I guess one, is that the case? And do we have any idea of when he wanted to become profitable?
Mm-hmm.
And then two, sorry, I guess you can continue with it.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. He wants it to be profitable within a year.
Yeah, okay. And then are there any other broader goals? Like, does he want us to branch into other different types of services or places? And then I guess, is there anything else I should know in terms of the goals that we're trying to achieve besides becoming profitable within a year?
No, that's his only goal.
Cool. I think then I have all the information I need. I will write up some of my thoughts, structure them, and then get back to you. Is that cool?
Cool. That
Sweet.
works.
All right, cool. I think I'm good to go, Rohit.
Cool.
So when I'm thinking about my friend's idea of wanting to start this bike rental service and then wanting to become profitable, not bike rental service, DVD rental service using bikes, and then thinking about also wanting to become profitable in a year, there are three things that come to mind. The first two are related to just like basic profitability, right? So the first one being revenue, the second one being costs. And then the third one is kind of I would say a catch-all of the human element. Like things like market trends mainly is what I'm trying to get at. So things like what is the movie popularity of people within Manhattan, looking at the demographics, looking at, I guess, also like any trends that would indicate things that would, I mean, it's easy for me to say now because we know Netflix is a thing. So like, but I guess back then I would have also wanted to consider just like any groundbreaking things that would like totally shift the marketplace to where a business model like this might become obsolete. Obviously easy to say with hindsight, but I think that'd be something I'd want to consider. But I think the meat of this case lies in the first two categories within revenue and costs, right?
Right.
And so digging a little bit deeper in those, of course we know within revenue, volume, price. So with volume, I'd want to know if my friend has any estimates as to how many DVDs he think he would be able to rent, or is that something that he'd want us to market size and kind of estimate for him? And then on the other side, price. I'm sure that there's probably a tiered pricing structure or like different kinds of prices that he might offer depending on how many DVDs. So I'd like to also understand his pricing structure and just overall like that side of the revenue portion. And then moving on to costs, of course, with fixed and variable. Just I guess digging deeper into those fixed costs, I'm sure is like you have to actually buy the rental seats, DVDs that you're going to be renting out. You need to buy bikes, and then also just like other costs in terms of fixed. And then variable being, I think labor might be the biggest one that I can foresee. So does that all kind of make sense within the revenue, cost, profitability?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool. And then do you agree that we should probably go towards that profitability, maybe even like the first thing, seeing if we can like market size within the revenue?
Yeah, that sounds like a great starting point. So how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think high level, before I take some time to really think about it a little bit more in detail, but the high level would be I'd want to, I guess we could even look at the like volume and the price categories within revenue. So like I'd want to market size the volume, starting with the population of Manhattan, then going to like DVD people who watch movies at home rather than like going to, the movie theater, or people who like don't even watch movies. And then out of those people, how many do we think would actually use our service?
Right.
And I think this is more just to like see what the potential market size is, not what it would be in a week from now. You know what I mean? So yeah, and then of course assume some kind of price that we're renting these DVDs for.
Right.
So kind of doing that, multiplying them together, and then that would get us the revenue, and then maybe we can put in costs later on. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. All right, cool. So I'll take maybe like 30 seconds or a minute to write all this stuff out, and then we can apply some numbers to it.
Cool. Perfect.
Okay, cool. So here's some of the numbers that I've come with. It's a little rudimentary, but I think it'll get the point across. I've broken it up into volume and price, like we mentioned earlier. Price being just like how much we'd rent the DVDs, and I guess also one thing I wanted to include in the price is like the actual delivery fee. That's something I should have commented on earlier. But we'll start in the revenue, starting with the population of Manhattan. I know that the population of New York City is around 9 million. I don't know exactly how much. It's like 8 to 9. I don't know how much exactly Manhattan takes up out of that population, but I assumed about a third. Just because I know there's a lot of other boroughs and stuff that make up New York City. Does that sound right to you?
So we actually have data on that. It's about 2 million people.
2 million? Okay, cool. So we can change that real quick. But yeah, so from that 2 million people, I will then assume a percentage of people. And I guess also, are these either DVD renters or the percentage that we assume of DVD renters who would use us? Are those numbers that we have any data on, or we do? Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I probably should have asked earlier then. Sorry.
You're good. So we know that 25% of the people in Manhattan rent DVDs.
Okay. And does that tell us how often?
No.
Okay, so we just assume that 25% rent at some point. And then do we know, I guess that'll give us the total like market size of people who rent DVDs, like the number of people who rent DVDs. Do we have a price at which we'd want to like rent them DVDs?
That's a good question.
If not, I can make an assumption, and if we get data in the future, we can always adjust it, right?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool. Yeah. So at first it seems 2 million, 25% of people rent DVDs. That gives us 500,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we know that in Manhattan, 500K people are renters, DVD renters.
Yep.
And that sounds like a pretty good number so far. That is like a lot of people, but I know that there are other prominent rental services like Blockbuster. So it'd be cool to see how integrated they are within Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way where we go from this is by assuming a percentage that we think would use our service,
Mm-hmm.
and then trying to apply revenue figures to that so that we can just come to a yearly revenue number,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then later on we can apply costs just to see if it'd be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I guess like what are some of the assumptions that you're making here?
Mm-hmm.
If you could clarify those.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to do. I guess the first assumption is so there's I think two main assumptions. The first one is out of these 500K DVD renters, how many do we think actually would use our service,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because then that'll give us just like our customer base.
Right.
And then the second one is just assuming a price
Mm-hmm.
of like how much do we think that my friend would charge, not only for the DVD rental but also for the delivery fee, which I think I'll just like kind of put that into one lump sum of what a customer pays.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then the last one, which I just thought of, I guess, is that we'd also want to assume how many times per year that these people rent.
Okay.
Because I think we'll want to do this on just like the first year basis so that we can test against the hypothesis that our friend had
Mm-hmm.
of wanting to be profitable in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do those real quick.
Yeah, I guess one more thing I should mention is that the friend knows that he can service all of Manhattan because it's too big.
He can't.
He can't.
Okay. Yeah, that's
And
true.
so he can only service. Let's see here. Let's say a third.
A third of Manhattan? Okay, cool. And I guess another assumption then that we can assume is that these 500K DVD renters are distributed evenly throughout Manhattan.
Yeah, you can assume that. In fact, let me make it a half, just so that your math is a little easier.
Sure, I appreciate that. Okay, so within our addressable market, there are 250K DVD renters.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the easy math. And then within that, I think for now, I'd want to assume that realistically, my gut is telling me that these 250K DVD renters would rent on average between the low end, which is one, they're DVD renters, so it'd be at least one a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
To up to as many as, I'm sure some people rent one DVD per weekend, so up to 50, right? But I think like most populations and most activities, it's a bell curve, and the middle is probably going to be somewhere around 5 to 10 times per year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds fair.
So I think what I'm going to do then is I'm going to apply that 10 DVDs per person per year, so about one per month. I think that sounds pretty reasonable, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, cool. So 10 DVDs per year. So that'll give us the number of DVDs rented within this population that we're trying to address, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then now we need to assume out of those people, how many do we think are actually going to use our friend service?
Right.
And I think that number is going to be, again, in like the single to low double digit numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think, especially in the first year, you're not going to... I want to be conservative in assuming how much market we capture. So I would say, conservatively, let's just use 10% again. And I think that once I multiply these out, it seems like this 10%, if this number comes out pretty high, that 10% could be the reason why.
Okay. Actually, one thing might help, and one concern that you raised earlier too, is that Blockbuster has a pretty strong hold on Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe we can be even more conservative and say he can only get 1% in the first year.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, let's do 1% then. So then we know out of the 250K DVD renters, 10 DVDs per year for them, so that's 2.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
1% of that is going to be 25,000, right? So
That makes sense.
means that 25,000 DVDs per year. Per the first year, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, this 1% will grow. And then for each DVD, I think that a reasonable, because I'm trying to put myself in the shoes, or in the shoes of a customer within Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
someone who probably has a decent amount of money if you're living on Manhattan, but still cares about affordability within the context of Manhattan affordability, right?
Right.
So I think one DVD that gets brought directly to your apartment or to your house, I could see people paying between like $4 to $8 for that. I think double digits, so like $10 is too much, and I think anything maybe even below $5 might not be enough for us to like overcome the cost of bikes and of labor and stuff. So I'll just say an even $7.5 sound good?
Yeah, I guess what other factors would we want to know in order to come to a price on this?
Yeah, I guess we'd want to know so I guess we'd want to know all the costs involved, right? And I can put another sheet.
I guess like maybe costs are obviously a good one, but maybe besides costs.
Oh yeah, I guess another thing would just be what are people used to paying for DVD rentals? So looking at what Blockbuster pays or charges people.
Yeah,
do we have data on that?
Yeah, so Blockbuster charges $4 per DVD. And then another important thing to note about Blockbuster, because I don't know how much you know about them, is like you have to go to the location in order to pick up the DVD.
Yeah, there was a Blockbuster in my neighborhood when I was young, so I remember visiting it. So yeah, still know about them.
Perfect.
But yeah, so that makes sense. But of course, yeah, like you mentioned, we have to go in and like actually pick it up. So I think mimicking their $4 per DVD, but then also having to add a delivery fee to that. Do we know if our friend has an idea of what kind of delivery fee he wants to add? Does he want it to be flat per delivery? Does he want it to like scale based on where they live? I'm guessing it's flat.
Right. Let's assume flat for now.
And is there any indication on how much he wants it to be?
No.
Or is that something I can assume?
You can assume that.
Okay. My assumption is that doubling the cost of the DVD would seem a little outrageous to people. So my estimate would be anywhere between $1 and $3. And for now, I'll just pick in the middle and say $2.
Okay.
Sound good?
Sounds fair.
So $2 for the delivery fee. So then that gives us $6 per DVD that we deliver, right?
Right.
And so remember back we had the 25K DVDs per year, multiplying that by the 6. That gives us 150K in revenue. Which, I mean, that doesn't seem great for revenue, but keeping in mind this is the first year, and also that the delivery fee I put on is pretty low, and that also that 1% that we put on is pretty low. So I would say, although this is not the most hopeful number, I'm thinking, especially given that like 150K doesn't go far in Manhattan, and the labor we're gonna have to pay is gonna eat up at that. I think it's not so bad that I would say don't do it at all. But to really see if this 150K in revenue is good or not, I'd want to look at the costs. So, are there any information that we have about that?
Some information, but I guess like what would you need?
Yeah,
what kind of costs?
So I think the main costs that I'm thinking about right now, I'm just gonna write them down real quick to make sure I don't forget.
Yeah, no worries.
And we mentioned them earlier within the context of fixed and variable costs, right? With the fixed being, buying bikes, buying actual CDs, DVDs. I put HR on there. I mean, that's just like other like background costs, administrative costs and stuff like that. And then the variable, I think the main one is labor. Yeah, and then maybe maintenance of bikes might be a variable cost as well.
Okay.
But yeah, what do we think? In addition to those.
Yeah, I think there's one cost that you're missing that would comprise this pretty significant cost. I think you got all the other ones.
Interesting.
And also, quick note on the bikes, we're just having the people that are delivering use their own bikes, so we don't have to pay for the bikes.
Cool. Yeah, in terms of besides DVDs, I guess the other thing would be setting up like an application or a website, so that people can actually like interface with our service and then like book stuff.
Yeah, so like marketing.
Yeah, marketing and like software and stuff.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Yeah.
In what category would you put that in?
Marketing would probably be fixed.
Sweet.
Or would definitely be fixed.
Cool. So I have a couple numbers on those. The DVD costs, you have another friend who has a huge collection and he's willing to sell it to you for $10,000.
Okay.
And that should be enough to get you started. And then you have another friend who is willing to build you the website and get you marketing material for $10,000. So both of those are $10,000.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say that the HR costs and all of that is kind of negligible for now. Like the friend will handle all of the hiring.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do we have any idea about labor?
Yeah, for the labor, we're assuming $4 per delivery person per delivery.
Okay. Interesting. So does that? I'm trying to make sure I'm interpreting that right, but that basically means that we're just keeping the delivery fee. If we look at it from a variable perspective, not taking into account the like fixed costs of the DVDs and the marketing, it seems like then we're getting just $2 or like whatever the delivery fee is, assuming that we have $4 for the rental, right?
Yeah. So like, without the fixed cost, the profit is $2 per. Yeah.
Cool. Sweet. So I think that gives us enough data, at least right now, to see if it would be profitable. Unless there's any other numbers, I can apply these numbers and see what the potential profitability for the first year comes out to be.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Cool. We assumed that 25,000 DVDs would be delivered per year. Mm-hmm. And we know that from all of those and our assumptions that we charge $4 per DVD, $2 for the delivery fee. So that means that really our profit is just this $2 per delivery fee, or $2 of delivery fee per DVD delivered, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's $50K. And then we know we have to take out these like 10,000 in marketing, which I'm sure my friend could probably negotiate with his friends to pay overtime. But let's just assume that we want to be good friends back to them because it seems like they're doing us favors. So we just want to pay them back whenever we can.
Mm-hmm.
So that's minus 20. So yeah, seems like 30K is our profit per year for the first year.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's I think that's definitely below the poverty line for Manhattan if our friend here is not doing any other jobs. So, I mean, this number isn't super hopeful, but again, keeping in mind, I assumed a lot of things that could be different in the real iteration of this. You know, the 1%, that's super low. The fact that we're only doing $2 per delivery fee, we are in Manhattan. People pay like $7 for coffee, you know, maybe they'll be willing to pay more than $2 for the delivery fee for a DVD. So
mm-hmm.
I think these are all things to consider when looking at this 30K. But even then, like, even let's say we 2x or 3x'd it to 90,000 instead of 30,000, like that still isn't the most hopeful number.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously a lot better, but you know what I mean? So,
yeah, I see.
Nothing to quit his job over. So
yeah. I guess like what other things would you look at in addition to just profitability?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I alluded to some of it in my framework, but could I have just like a little bit of time to write some stuff down?
For sure.
Cool. Cool. So come up with a handful of ideas, and I've kind of categorized them into 3 categories of kind of the other things that he can think about or do.
Mm-hmm.
The first one being kind of like market-related research. The second one being partnerships. And then the third one kind of a catch-all for both expansion and then also like negotiation. And I'll explain what those mean in a sec. Starting with the first one with market research, I think one thing that he should definitely try to be aware of is like what hot movies are coming out, you know, on DVD that people would want to be rented, or is this a down cycle for movies? You know, like the last couple of years been not that great for DVD movies, because I think that would really affect how many people want to use the service. And then also doing some market research on the pricing. So optimal price for delivery. Like I know Chinese places and pizza places, like those are common delivery places, right? So we want to see how much are people, especially in like these places within Manhattan, paying for delivery already. You know, obviously a different product, but still I think very similar enough.
Right.
And then the last one just being like understanding the demographics, right? I think some demographics are going to be more targeted towards rentals than others. Right. So just making sure we understand not only who those people are, but then also how to best advertise for them. And then kind of quickly going through the other 2 partnerships, wanting to see maybe like, I don't know, people rent a lot of movies on Valentine's Day. So I put Valentine's Day there, if, like, places like do delivery on chocolate or flowers.
Right.
They also provide a movie, from our service.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like, on delivery food, like, what's better paired with, like, a DVD rental that you can watch at your house than, like, pizza or, like, Chinese food, something like that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So seeing if there's a useful way we can tag along there. And then the last one being expansion. So seeing what other boroughs within Manhattan or within New York City, but then also other places in Manhattan we can expand to. Like, why are we only able to address half and not the full thing?
Right.
And then also, our other boroughs, like, within New York, outside of Manhattan. And then the last thing is just negotiating with the bikes or the labor people. It's good that they're bringing their own bikes, but $4 per delivery for each DVD could be a lot, especially if, like, they're delivering 10 DVDs to the same apartment building or the same block. Like, we might be shooting ourselves in the foot by doing that. Instead maybe we just do, like, an hourly thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know we need to keep the incentives aligned, because the way we do it now, the more DVDs they I guess deliver in a short amount of time, the better for them and us. So keeping that incentive aligned, but also, like, trying to see if we can cut costs there.
That makes sense. Okay, so given all that, what would you recommend to your friend?
Yeah, cool. So if I had to give a recommendation to my friend, I would recommend this idea with caution. Okay? And what I mean by that is, so far within the first year, it doesn't look the best in terms of profitability, but the reason I still would want him to go forward with it is because I think a lot of the numbers that we've used were pretty conservative, right? And so even if some of those numbers were 2x to 5x, like, that could be a reasonable profit for the first year. So yeah, again, just reiterating, I would recommend that he do it, but that he refocus on a lot of the numbers that we calculated here, just to really pressure test if this would be a profitable venture for him or not. And then kind of talking about next steps or things outside of just the regular yes or no that I think he should consider are a lot of these things, specifically the market research, just like being able to find out the optimal target audience and then the optimal amount that they would pay for the delivery, because I think that's where he's going to get a lot of the revenue from. And then on the other side of it, with the costs, trying to negotiate with the laborers or the people who are riding these bikes and delivering to see if he can cut that down, because every additional dollar we get per delivery is huge. That's increasing our profit margin by, like, 10s or 20%.
Right.
And then I think that the nice to have next steps would just be, like, these partnerships or, like, the expansions to other places in Manhattan, probably, like, secondary, tertiary kind of ideas. After you've gotten the, like, primary business model down pat. So
cool, that makes sense. I think the friend will be happy with this.
Cool. Until Netflix comes.
That is true. 10 years later, he's out of business, and then he blames you.
Yeah, true. I can't read the future, though, so.
All right, Neel, let's start with the feedback.
All right, let's do it, man.
I guess first off, you did well in the case, in my opinion. But
would you hire me?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay. Whatever.
But I wanted to hear how you think you did.
I mean, considering that I haven't cased in 3 years, no, I'm just kidding. No excuses. I've been doing the job for the last year. I think I did well. I don't think, and I say that from the perspective of, I don't think there were any, like, major flaws. I do think that I missed some things, and I was slow to get certain things that were important in certain aspects, like the cost and marketing being a big one. I think it took me a little bit too long to get to that, but yeah, overall I think I did fine. But obviously room to improve if I were to, like, be having an interview in a month, but I'm not, so.
Yeah, no, I think that's a pretty good assessment. I think you did a pretty good job overall. I'll just go through from start to finish what I liked and what I didn't like.
Cool.
So starting off, I think you asked some really good clarifying questions. So things like, what the goals were, which I think is always a really important question, and the time period. The only thing is, on the time period and the goals, I guess the main goal was that he wanted to break even within 1 year, and then later on in the case, you were, like, being worried about, $30,000 is not a lot, but all you wanted was to get be profitable in the first year. So I think using that later would have been better.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't really understand. Yeah,
no, you're good. After that, I think the way you laid it out in terms of framework was really good, especially starting off with, here are the main three things that I want, and then listing them 1, 2, 3 as a broad overview, and then getting into each of the three in more detail.
Yeah. A quick thing on that, just about frameworks. So especially with like COVID and stuff, you all probably will not have a lot of in-person interviews. So you'll be having to practice cases virtually with your friends, but then also do cases whenever you get interviews. One thing that you want to keep in mind when you're giving someone a framework over the internet or even in person is that you want to explain it so well that if they were not looking at your paper but only listening to your voice, they could still rewrite your framework and draw it almost exactly like how you have it on the paper. So I think in that aspect, the paradigm that Rohit mentioned of overviewing the different categories you have in your framework, first one, second one, third one, all together, and then deep diving into each one individually is a really good way of doing that. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Another really good thing that you did was you understood that the meat of the case lied in the profitability, and you also mentioned it, and so that leads me to know that you know what you're doing. And then finally, you went from, hey, this is what I think I want to focus on. Like you laid out the whole framework, and then you were like, all right, let's focus on this. Does this sound good? And so that shows that you want to drive the case, which is also good for the interviewer.
Yeah, and then gives you the potential to redirect me in case I'm going down the wrong path.
Exactly. Yeah.
That makes sense.
So I think you did a great job there. Then you went into the market sizing. I think you stumbled a little bit with like going into market sizing, not on the volume side, but you were mentioning things like price. Instead, I think it might have been better if you just focused on like, okay, what's the size of the market, and then focus on pricing later instead of mentioning it all at once. Because I was kind of trying to figure out what you were doing over there in that period of time.
I guess I was trying to figure. Sometimes when people say market size, they can mean the number of people. Sometimes they can mean the number of dollars spent. I was taking more of the dollar spent revenue approach. So that's why I was trying to do both at the same time.
Okay.
But maybe a thing that I probably could have done there is asked if you had any information before. I kind of assumed that it would be a pure market sizing where I'd have to come up with all the numbers. So maybe that's something I could have just included a quick question on. Do you have any information on any of these things before I dove in? Yeah.
And then I think you did a really good job of laying out exactly what you were going to do on the market sizing before actually plugging in the numbers. I do think there were a couple of things that you missed out in that broad overview, but I kind of just wanted to let you drive the case.
What kinds of things have you missed?
Yeah, so I was going to mention one thing is that you assumed that you could do all of Manhattan. And especially when you're doing something like this, you want to tell me that you're assuming that. And then the second thing was a lot of the times DVDs, this is kind of like more DVD specific, but people watch it as like families or households. And so if you assume like, for example, there are 2 people per household, you'd want to divide everything by 2, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And so those are, I guess, like a couple assumptions that you made, but overall, I think you did a pretty good job on the market sizing. Then plugging in the numbers, multiplying everything, your numbers were right. And then after that, we went into pricing. I think you had some good assumptions there on the price. I do think like you could have asked me a couple more pieces of information on data that I had, like the Blockbuster being $4 and competitor pricing. But overall, I think you did a pretty good job of making assumptions, coming to a price, and then multiplying all the prices with the volume to figure out revenue. On the cost side, you already mentioned this, could have gotten to marketing or brainstormed it prior, but at least you got it later.
Cool.
You led the direction, after profitability, going into the factors of what other things you would want to mention, which is also good. The only issue there that I had was you didn't mention a lot of other operations issues that could have come up.
Yeah, definitely.
So like, I guess one example for the viewers, and this is also kind of like DVD specific, but you deliver it to the person, but you also want to like pick it up later, maybe at the end of the week. And so that's going to be another delivery cost for the driver. For a pickup, yeah. So that could have resulted in another $4 of delivery, which would have put you at a negative profitability. So that's one operations issue. There could be a couple of other ones like, if there's winter season and
seasonality.
And it's like snowing in Manhattan and you can't bike, that cuts down your revenue by a pretty significant amount.
Yeah.
And so just a couple of operations things there.
Yeah. Quick question, or I guess not question. Quick point on that. Like these are mistakes that I think are totally like reasonable and fine to make. But the important thing is that you make them once, and then I think like let's say that I was casing again in a week. I think these would be mistakes that would be fresh on my mind. So that's the importance of practicing, especially in getting stuff wrong, is that it helps you not get them wrong in the future. So if you're, I guess, hesitant to start casing, I think that is a good reason why. Is every subsequent time you will just have so many more mistakes that you've made in the past that you can draw from and then do well on in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And then finally, the recommendation was really good. I would just focus on being profitable in the first year as really important.
Yeah.
And I think you gave answer first. You gave your a couple solid reasons why you went with that recommendation. You gave next steps and also a couple of risks you would want to look out for in the future. So I think that's a great way of kind of framing the recommendation.
Cool. Yeah. One, I guess, piece of advice I always got on the recommendation. Well, two pieces of advice really. The first one being always lead with your recommendation. Say like, in this situation, I recommend that, and then say your actual like yes or no. And then maybe 2 to 3 points, depending on how many you have, of actual support for that. And then maybe restate your recommendation. And then always give next steps of, okay, if they were actually going to pursue this recommendation, what would you then recommend that they go and do or research or implement? And then what are the next step, or what are the risks? Sorry, what are the risks in terms of both doing this recommendation and those next steps that you need to keep in mind? So it's kind of like an overview of the recommendation that Rohit and I were taught when kind of going through this process.
Yeah, so that's the end of the case.
Yeah, nice. And again, I mentioned this in the introduction like 30 minutes ago, but I want to remind y'all. But if there are any aspects specifically of either the case interview or more broadly applying to the big 3 consulting firms that you want answered, please let us know in the comments below. And then if you see other people who have made the same comment, please make sure to like or I don't know, do whatever you need to do to make sure that that's visible so that Rohit and I know what the most important pressing issues are so that we can answer them for you quickly. But
yeah, and if you have any questions on the feedback that we were talking about, also put those in the comments and we'll answer directly into those comments.
Oh yeah, that's true. Cool.
Sweet.
Nice. See y'all next video.